let's pause for a moment to look back at books 1 and 2.
Well, we finished the overview of Book 2. So this gets Book 1 and Book 2 behind us. So what was in Book 2? Book 2 opened with Chapter 7, the storytelling chapter, moved into the systems chapter, and then ended up in Chapter 9 with drama. One of the things that reoccurred to me for the umpteenth time going through is that some of these chapters are badly named, and as chapter titles grab the attention and direct the eye, it's something that the company really ought to consider, especially given how much of each product is being recycled and reused, repurposed for each different game line. There is an increasing tendency among storytellers to read less and less, to focus in on specifics. So that's something to think about. But Book 2 opens up talking mostly to the storyteller, and sticks with that pretty much until Chapter 9. Right? Chapter 9 is really something that everybody should be aware of. They should have an understanding of how the game actually works. So that's one of the things that running a prelude can do, and get everybody used to what the die pools are, how they work, how the combinations of things that they have chosen actually impact play and actually lead them to conceptions of character. And there's the way things look on paper before you use them, and then there's the way they look after you use them. Going through the systems and the drama chapter, these things fall into place. The specific systems chapter is again focused on wraithly existence, things like experience points. Right? If I create my character thinking that they're going to grow quickly, is that expectation true? If I create my character thinking that they are very experienced, is that perception true? And so on and so forth. So that's all very, very interesting. The storyteller chapter was the hardest for me, and there's this theme running through the book, I find, of giving or using language that suggests that the different modes of play have not really been explored to the point where it's easy for the writers and repurposers of all this text to put down concisely and clearly as distinct. So let's actually talk about that a little bit. The text says things to you like, prepare. I hesitate even to know what to call it. So I'm going to use the word story, because that's the common word. So prepare a story, meaning you have a sense of a starting point. You have some ideas about the pushes and the pulls dramatically on the characters. And remember, and this is before the characters are made. And you have an idea where it's going to go, like, because you're developing a theme and you want to develop a mood, and the mood flows from the theme. So this will be a story of redemption, like we're moving toward transcendence. Let's do a transcendent story, or this is a story of rebellion, or this is a story of so on and so forth. That is a clear direction of travel, and it's an end point. All right. Even if after some thought you pull back on the idea it's a story of transcendence to it's a story about the search for transcendence, or it's a story about what transcendence might be, that's the direction in which we're moving. And some players are going to take that and try to transcend. You know what I mean? So then, after you've created your story, you guide character creation to make sure that that idea and their characters fit together, so they're relevant to each other. And then you run preludes to make sure that each person knows how that character actually works and can tweak and adjust it so that it really does fit the story that you have in mind. And then play begins, and you're given the advice that if it seems like unwanted outcomes, either from you as the storyteller or them as the players, if unpleasant or unwanted outcomes are at risk of happening because this is a game that uses dice and systems to resolve matters of, conflict, then you should not use them. You should instead cheat in order for the expectations about the story to be met. Now we're talking about disregarding some not complicated, but, layered mechanisms within the game. We're talking about just discarding them whenever, because the story we think we want is imperiled. So in other words, we're isolating ourselves from the story that the dice and decisions will make happen, in favor of the story that feels right, or feels like it's coming, or it feels like they want, or it feels like the storyteller wants, or whatever. This is a whole bunch of people working hard to create something that everybody else thinks everybody else wants, instead of working with what the system gives them. Right? So that is a way to play. Another way to play is to not do a lot of that. For example, you could talk to the group and ask them what it is in Wraith characters they would like to explore, and then try and find a theme in what they suggest. And if you can't, then start modifying those characters so that one does present itself. Once that theme has presented itself, and once those adjustments have been made, then character creation has been finalized, and everybody's aware of what the theme is. They themselves have worked to find it. And then we can do things like running preludes to see if how the characters actually manifest when we actually try to play them, and make any further adjustments. And then the storyteller needs to find a starting point. What is a scene that makes sense for these people to begin our chronicle together? Right? So the theme has been suggested by who the characters are, and the story is going to arise from how they choose to interact with the setting. And the parts of the setting that the storyteller is going to draw from are the ones that are relevant to the theme, right? Dialing up focus on the things that matter to the people who are looking, and dialing down the ones that don't. Now these dials can be twisted as the story moves on, as the characters evolve, right? All these setting elements are present. So the storyteller becomes the lore keeper, the true, window into that world. But when people show up to play, the storyteller isn't there to guide them in any particular direction. What do you want to do? And there are storyteller characters who all have agendas, who are all in motion. There are setting points that are in motion as are presented in the actual text, and you move through time. It's part of your job to deal with time, and each time we have a rule section, it starts with time. Time. You move through time. And the chronicle takes its shape. And when things require the dice are used, and the outcomes are respected. And this also shapes your story. And through the driving force of the characters' personalities, the players' decisions, the interactions with the dice, and the presentation of the setting by the storyteller, you move from beginning through middle to whatever it is you decide is the end. This is a different way to play. Now, in the text itself, it talks about carrot and stick, right? And in Wraith 1, this was presented as you can put things out in the world that you know that people are interested in and watch them go after them, right? This is character-driven story. Or you can create a story for them to move through and create negative consequences as like dungeon walls around them so that they can only travel where it is that they need to go. And you can make this as fun, exciting, dramatic, and cool and funny and happy as you like, but that's what you're doing. So you're either luring them or blocking them. In Wraith 1, the character-driven side of things is coming from a place of freedom. And the stick side of things is coming from a place of control. In later editions of Wraith, the lure and the stick are the same. And the idea of story-driven versus character-driven play is the same. So this variance is lost, right? So in character-driven play, we want to see what story the characters have in them. So we want to motivate them. So what's going to motivate them? And we put those things into the setting as our contribution to that. Or we drop a story into the setting and consequences conspire to push the characters into involvement with it, and then it will take care of itself. The shift in awareness about these is the most significant thing that I notice. Coming back to Storyteller after a long time away and reading through a series of Storyteller books now in order from start to finish as comparison to prepare for this overview. So it's interesting. It doesn't, in a sense, matter. It doesn't make the game good or bad. It does, however, make this particular part of its ability to give advice to new players confusing, because it's actually telling them to prepare a story and not to prepare a story, to improvise and not improvise, to use the dice and not use the dice, to follow this system and not use, right? And this is what I mean when I say incoherent. And it's unnecessary, and it's the unnecessariness of it that makes it disappointing. I'm still excited about Wraith. I'm still very impressed with the actual writing ability of the team of authors that was used in the chapters where they get to just tell us about Wraith and get us excited about it. In these parts where Wraith comes into contact with the storyteller system, the differing philosophies of play of the authors or the different levels of awareness about types of play of the authors causes confusion. And it's not a point that I, at this point, can really overlook. Now, what's ahead? Ahead is Book 3, which ends the 20th Anniversary Edition. And it has things like the chapter for Spectres. It has things like the chapter for the Risen. It has further, almost a bestiary, I guess we could look at it, for the World of Darkness itself. And it has the appendix where we get into Orpheus, which is a crossover between mortals and wraiths. So a lot of tools are packed into the 500 pages of Wraith 20th Anniversary Edition. What are we going to think about Book 3? Well, Book 3 is going to have a lot of character creation information in it. You can play Spectres. How well are you guided to do so? Is it going to be informative, instructive, and shape the experience, or is it going to be restrictive and discouraging? Similarly with the Risen, it's a very difficult character type to play, and one which can offer incredible stories, as is evidenced by James O'Barr's The Crow. Being able to play through that kind of story is a powerful lure. Are we still going to want to? Or are we going to be even more ready to when we go through the Risen chapter? Who can say? What secrets does Orpheus hold for us? And what new mysteries and threats lie in the World of Darkness chapter? So it's a lot to look forward to in Book 3. And it's coming.